At 30 years old, Delilah Mercer never imagined she would be walking out of a courthouse in Lubbock with nothing but a folded envelope of divorce papers and a life growing quietly beneath her heart. Her husband had not shouted, had not begged, had not even looked guilty. He had simply said that fatherhood would ruin everything he had planned. And in that single sentence, Delilah understood she had been married to ambition, not love. Because when she told him about the baby, his silence stretched, colder than any winter wind, and within weeks he had erased her from his future as neatly as ink from a ledger. She returned home that evening to half-empty closets and a house that no longer felt like shelter. And though she tried to stay strong, the weight of abandonment pressed against her ribs until breathing itself felt like work. Word spread quickly through their tight-knit West Texas town, and the same neighbors who once praised her pies at Sunday gatherings now exchanged cautious glances, some offering pity disguised as kindness, while others quietly suggested she had somehow failed as a wife. And when the landlord decided not to renew her lease to avoid community discomfort, Delilah realized she had not only lost a marriage but her place in society, forcing her to pack what little remained of her dignity into 2 suitcases and board a rattling bus heading toward ranch country without any promise of welcome. The sky darkened as she stepped off at the last stop near miles of fenced land and distant cattle, exhaustion overtaking her resolve. And as a storm rolled across the plains, she collapsed beside a wooden fence line, unaware that from the porch of a weathered ranch house, a solitary cowboy named Archer Callahan had been watching her slow, stubborn steps with a growing concern he could not explain. Archer Callahan was a man carved by hardship and silence, having buried both parents before he was 20, and built his ranch from stubborn grit rather than inheritance. And though he kept his world small and orderly, something about the sight of a pregnant woman collapsing in the dust stirred a protective instinct he had long buried. He carried Delilah inside without asking questions, laying her gently on a worn leather couch near the fireplace, while rain lashed against the windows. And when she woke in panic, expecting rejection or accusation, she instead found a quiet man, placing a glass of water beside her and telling her simply, "You're safe here." Words so steady they felt almost unfamiliar. She tried to leave the next morning out of pride, insisting she did not want charity. But Archer's calm reply, that shelter offered freely is not charity but decency, stopped her retreat. And for the first time since signing the divorce papers, she allowed herself to rest, without fear of being unwanted. Days turned into weeks as she helped in small ways around the ranch, mending shirts, organizing supplies, and sitting on the porch at sunset, while Archer spoke little, yet listened deeply. And though the town soon learned of her presence and began murmuring about scandal and poor judgment, he refused to let those whispers enter his home, even riding into town one afternoon to confront a shopkeeper who implied Delilah was a burden, making it clear that anyone disrespecting her would answer to him. Slowly, the ranch transformed from temporary refuge into shared ground, laughter cautiously returning during simple dinners, Delilah's guarded heart beginning to soften as Archer revealed fragments of his own loneliness. And in those golden prairie evenings she realized that strength sometimes arrives not with grand speeches but with quiet consistency, a man who fixes broken fences by day and defends your name by night. Winter descended early that year, blanketing the plains in frost and turning the ranch into a world of white silence. And by then Delilah's fear of abandonment had begun to fade, though she still wondered if kindness could truly survive the weight of responsibility. When labor struck unexpectedly during a fierce midnight blizzard, pain crashing through her in relentless waves, Archer did not hesitate. He saddled his strongest horse and rode through biting wind to fetch the nearest doctor miles away, returning with snow frozen in his beard and urgency burning in his eyes. And he remained just outside her bedroom door through every cry, hat clutched tightly and trembling, hands as if standing guard over both mother and child just before dawn. As the storm began to quiet, a newborn's cry pierced the stillness of the ranch house, small yet defiant. And when the doctor asked for the father's name to record on the birth certificate, there was a brief pause, heavy with history, the betrayal, the gossip, the loneliness, before Archer stepped forward and said firmly, "Write mine," not because he was asked to, not because he felt obligated, but because somewhere between the first shared meal and the long winter nights, he had chosen them as his family months later, when he carried the baby boy through town with steady pride while Delilah walked beside him, no longer bowed by shame. The same people who once whispered now tipped their hats in quiet respect. Because in a land shaped by hardship, true courage is measured by who you stand beside when it is easier to walk away. And Archer Callahan had claimed more than a child that day. He had claimed a future, rewriting a story that began in abandonment into one rooted in loyalty, proving that sometimes the strongest bloodline is the one forged by love rather than born from it.